Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Eliminate Your Revit BOM Schedules with Evolve Materials. Thank you for spending some time with us today. This webinar is brought to you by Evolve MEP. My name is Ashley Danahy, and I am the Product Marketing Specialist for Evolve, and I will be your moderator today. Before we get started, I'll go through some webinar housekeeping. We encourage you to take advantage of the fully customizable webinar console by clicking on the icons at the bottom of your screen. You can resize any of these widgets during the presentation. Don't forget to type your questions and comments into the Q&A widget throughout the presentation. We'll take time to answer questions at the end of today's webinar. Please take a moment to introduce yourself. You can also take the survey at any time during or after the webinar. This webinar is being recorded for your convenience. You will be receiving an email with a recording link for future reference. You can find Evolve MEP on social media to make meaningful connections, receive special offers, and stay up to date on the newest innovations. Also, be sure to visit our website, evolvemep.com, to see how to enhance your data, empower your supply chain, and take on more work. And with that being said, I would like to introduce our presenter today, Michael Schinn.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Schinn. I'm the product manager for Evolve Electrical, as well as the mechanical product. I bring about 20 years of BIM experience to the table. Just one of your regular Revit nerds, been doing this a pretty long time. Today, we're going to go over all about how to push data out of your Revit model up into the materials cloud, which is one of the hardest things to do from the years of detailing from my experience, was managing on those schedules and working on these large projects and running your own team. It gets very difficult to manage all of those different schedules. So that's one of the things that we're going to be going over today. We also, on this call, we also have James Simpson, my counterpart of the product management team for Evolve. James, would you do a little introduction for yourself as well?
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet, guys. So yeah, obviously James Simpson, kind of a similar background, just with about half that amount of experience. I've been around about 10 years now and done pretty much anything inside the VDC space, from modeling to coordination, managing prefab, all the way now to doing custom development, and then obviously being a product manager for the Evolve product. So wide variety of backgrounds here, both from mechanical and electrical. So, and I'll just kind of preface everything saying that obviously bias, right? But very similar to what Michael said, one of the biggest challenges is getting that data out of the model, along with some other ones that you'll see. And so truly, really kind of am excited to show you guys what we have today and, see what kind of questions and feedback we get from it.
Excellent. Thanks, James.
Yep.
Actually, can you pull up the first poll question so we can see who our audience is today, so we can help tailor this demo or presentation?
Yes. And our first question is, what is your role at your company? Please go ahead and select your answer now.
Yeah, and just to add some commentary to fill the void as we choose our options here. Just basically wanting to know, where you are in kind of this workflow, just so we can really hone in on some of those areas, or Michael can hone in on some of those areas as we go through. So nothing too crazy. We're not going to target you anything or anything like that with ads after, just trying to make sure we, hit the right things as we start showing some stuff off here.
And if you're a regular BIM detailer or CAD, whatever you guys want to call them these days, you can put that down as a VDC manager as well. But we're trying to understand exactly who our audience is today to help tailor this.
Looks like we're still getting some in.
Perfect.
We'll give it another couple seconds here. All right, we ready for the results?
Let's do it. Perfect.
All right.
Exactly what we were looking for.
That's exactly what it was. Yep. A lot of Revit users.
You have come to the right place.
Great. Alrighty, so yeah, let's go ahead and I'll start sharing my screen and really start diving into what we want to present today. Click screen number 2. Let me know if you guys can see my screen. Should be the Revit model.
Yep.
Yep.
Perfect. Cool. So everyone's familiar, pretty much 90% of the people on this call are familiar with Revit here. So this is one of our internal models that we've been building for the last maybe 6 or 7 months or so. Just standard BIM 360 model. We call this the Vandelay industry model from, a little Seinfeld reference there. This is just a fun testing model that we've been putting together for a while. You see a basic switchgear room down in the bottom right corner, a couple of risers going in here. The model's got some decent amount of detail in here with your different type of strut stands. All of this is all content that's made from Evolve Electrical. This demo is going to be mostly on the electrical side for today. We've got James on here, like you said before, to answer any questions from the mechanical side. It works nicely in the sandbox. It's basically materials, when we get into it, it reads basically any of the Revit data that you're looking to push up. So you can see with this model, it's got a decent amount of data in there. It's fully BIM 360, pretty standard model, work sets are enabled and everything. But from a modeling standpoint, from a detailer standpoint, you're going to have a tremendous amount of schedules that are on here. And in order for any of your field team, their product management, any of the purchasing people, the next people along the food chain, basically along the process of the project, in order to see any of this data, they need to actually have a license of Revit, open up possibly this large model, access all that data that's in there, simply to get a bill of material or a BOM. So in this case, we got a simple bill of material that we have here. And you can see it. You can break this down in many different ways inside of here. But one of the things that I found with Revit is how difficult it actually is to really make your schedules. There's no or options inside of your different schedules. It's only and options. What is the category that's associated to? Is it a multi-category schedule? There's a lot of variables to it. So James and I were talking before, Revit was really designed along the concept of drawing stuff in a 3D environment for clash detection and to be able to create your sheets and your drawings. And that's now evolved into this source or single source of truth for all of this metadata that's in there. What manufacturer is that coupling or that item or that valve you're going to be using? It's just endless amount of data is now being added into these models, or now bloating these models and making them almost very hard to work with, to the point where you go to move an element, the little spinny wheel, which I hate seeing. I move this little thing over, little spinny wheel. That adds up throughout the day, and there's just a tremendous amount of detail that can be added into these elements, as well as the different configurations that it can be, the amount of data, what manufacturer and parts and pieces that you're doing. And a lot of those parts and pieces are also being changed or selected based on the purchaser that's going to be working on that. Whereas the detailer, he just wants to make sure that it's at the right box or has the right assembly number and so on. So you can get really down the rabbit hole with Revit, but unfortunately, the more information you put in, the larger your model is going to get and the slower you're going to work. Yeah. So that's where the material concept has come into play. What you also do with these projects is, from a project setup standpoint, you also then require them to break down this model in certain different areas and kits and levels. So usually on a kickoff meeting with these projects, you probably set up different areas for your building. What I've done with this model is I've put together some basic areas inside this building, utilizing the Evolve kitting feature. So this has got your basic little kit area. I'm calling this the electrical room level 1 little kit area. We got kits and areas throughout the different floors of this building, all broken out in different areas. So you can then break it out per port and schedule everything. So there's a lot of different things that you have to then manage from a detailer standpoint. It's just putting more and more hats and more requirements and stuff for that detailer to work on. So the idea behind this is where the materials functionality comes into play. And what we're going to be working on mostly today is I want to extract a lot of the data that's in this little electrical switchgear room, which I've done all the spools for it as well, put together a couple prefab packages and stuff like that. So let's dive into now the material aspect of this. So I got a quick little slide I can pull up here on the screen. So one of the key things behind materials is detailers are spending hundreds of hours a year just maintaining schedules and material lists inside of Revit. You've got tons and tons of different schedules in your model. So you're basically trying, the idea is to spend less hours managing schedules and parts and pieces that are in there with those schedules, as opposed to just detailing and drawing and avoiding those clashes. So the idea behind it with Evolve Materials, you can then use those budgeted hours to automatically create BOMs from the Revit model. So basically the idea is the VDC, the detailer, is not sitting here now exporting out to Excel or the CSV out of Revit to the fab, to the field, or to the next, or the purchaser or the manager. Give them a looking glass into the Revit model for just the data that they're looking for. So in this case, you're able to actually then pull up and actually see the metadata that's associated to all the elements that are inside of that and start creating bills of material from that side. So let's pull up that next poll question, which was how many schedules do you typically have in a project? This kind of pairs pretty well with this.
Yeah, I'm really interested to hear these answers.
Yeah, do you currently maintain per project? Up to 10 to 40, or 40 or more, I think is what it's going to be. And this is just bill of material schedules too.
Yeah. So to be clear here, guys, this isn't like, as far as what schedules we're really referring to, not necessarily schedules that like, all right, well, I'm trying to find something in the model. I kind of use it to audit my model here and there, because you can kind of use schedules in a lot of different ways, right? But schedules as far as things that you're actually creating in order to get data out of the model to someone else down the line, right? Whether it's a purchaser, having to give something to the fab shop, different things, right? Of actually getting that data out and just trying to just kind of as a ballpark of, how many you're having to maintain because of that.
Cool. Let's see the results on that one, because we probably segue into the next question too, because that kind of.
All right, here we go.
Yep.
Man, I wince at the 40 or more. That is a lot to try and manage. That's rough.
And especially, I think it's due to the fact that there's no or option with schedules really impacts that. And
yeah. I mean, we'll dive into that more,
sure.
As we go along. But yeah, I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, all those answers, there's nothing inherently wrong in a process of no matter how many you have. A lot of it's just some of those native Revit limitations or platform challenges, or honestly, sometimes just trying to make it, bend it to your wheel to get some of these things done.
Right.
So yeah, no judgment, but definitely interesting.
And so the next one I'll show on the screen here too, also will go well with that poll question, is the complex model or complex families that you're trying to create to then extract out all of this data. So we got two samples here. We got a simple in-wall assembly, and on the right we've got another one here, which is a hanger. You can see on both of those scenarios, where it has the X next to it, it's got a lot of different parts and pieces are in there. Revit does not really like all of these different geometry, all these different shapes. And you're trying to add in all that data. A lot of people are actually drawing with that actual Rayco box or the actual valve of that manufacturer. Meanwhile, the purchaser, in theory, could be ordering it not from a Rayco or from an actual different manufacturer, but it's still a 4-inch box or that ball valve. It's a ball valve.
Well, and how many times when you get that kind of that feedback from the purchaser of, hey, we're actually not using that on this job, are you having to go back in and switch everything out so your BOM ends up being accurate?
Right, and the only thing that's really changing in the Revit model is just the BOM data. There's no physical.
I mean, unless it's like a piece of equipment that's 10x bigger than the one you had, so you need to switch it out just for space claiming in a model. I mean, those kind of things, obviously. But man, I tell you, I can't tell you how many times I had to just switch it out just to get the BOM accurate.
So the idea where we're going with this, there's a line in the sand we need to establish with what actually gets put in the Revit model, and then what can actually be handled and pushed out to, say, in this case, materials. So basically what they're doing now is everything's just getting pushed into this Revit model. That's the source of truth. That's the data. That's where everything is. And it's just bloating these models. So our idea that we can do is with your example, an in-wall assembly for the electrical side, it's just a simple box, and that could be called assembly A or assembly 100, whatever you guys want to call that assembly number. But back at materials, assembly A, it has this box, and so on, and all the different data that's supposed to be stored inside of there. So they actually can connect your assemblies to the material side. So that person can then determine how many parts and pieces or how much to actually order and what manufacturer they're going to be ordering from. So I guess our next poll question that comes up here is, are you, I think what is it? It is, are you finding that your Revit models are heavy, trying to meet the information requirement for purchasing? So
yeah, let's push that next poll, actually.
Yeah.
Yep.
So are you finding that your Revit models are too heavy trying to meet the information requirement for purchasing? Simple yes or no.
No fibbing.
Mm-hmm.
And after this one, I promise we're going to dive right now.
Yeah,
yeah.
No, we're building the
story. Yeah. Let's go.
I mean, this is something that myself and Michael, from just being on other customer feedback calls for the mechanical and electrical products alone, often hear just about how people are having to break out models, even in one model internally into 3 or 4, just because they're so information dense or geometry dense. So yeah, something we even hear a lot just on electrical and mechanical products.
Let's see these results. That should make 100% yes. Wow. Okay. Cool.
Good stuff.
Yep. All right. Let's show you guys what materials is all about now. So cool. We painted the picture enough here already. So I want to basically create a looking glass. So I'm the detailer right now. I want my purchasers asking me, hey, give me a bill of material for all the parts and pieces that you see in the screen here. This is like, again, all part of like package, like level 1 area A, I think I call it or something. But what we're able to do with materials is we ship with a integration profile. This is basically where you're able to associate basically parameter linking between between Revit model and materials. So in this case, this ships with the product already. So cool, what floor, what's the level? So basically, you're just matching with the parameters that you want to push up to materials. The column name, these are all the preset column headers that we have in materials currently with the product. So you can broken up by drawing, by system, by category. Once this is set, it's real straightforward. I click on to materials, automatically logs in with my username and password. You pick your profile that you wanted to use. We'll just use the default material ones that we ship with. This pull-down menu here will display all of the available projects that you have set up on the materials website or within the product. So again, one thing, make sure this does not affect anything with BIM 360 or any of that stuff, or wherever your models are stored at. You still work the same way with your work sets and all that stuff. This is just pushing up that metadata to a different location. So I'm going to pick my Vandelay industry model, and I'll click OK. What this is now going to do with this large size model is then push up the entire model, all of the metadata, up to the materials site. So as a detailer, the PM is asking, hey, I want access to all of the bill of material and all the data for this electrical room that's down here. Well, perfect. I just finished spooling everything. I also got it all associated to a prefab package as well, and I'm now ready to push this up to the website.
Yeah, and one thing I'll mention too is around those integration profiles. The beauty behind that is, of course, we ship with defaults, right? We want to make sure you hit the ground running, and it'll probably work for 80% of what you're going to do right out of the box. But the beauty behind that is that customization allows things like, say, fabrication parts. If you're a mechanical contractor and you're using that, you can choose those different fields, those different categories, and really set that mapping up. According to your database, according to the way you're setting up a family, where you're storing that information. We're not at all locking you into this parameter is always going to go to this thing in materials. So make sure you put your information there, right? It's completely customizable to however, your database or your families are created.
Exactly. So here is the materials website. So from here, under project, you can create new projects or see your active projects. So I simply just click on the active projects. I open up my Van Delay industry model. So in my first window here, we now have under planning, there's my Revit sync information. So this is now going to display all of the latest data that we have now pushed up to basically to the cloud here. So by default, you see summary. This is basically showing you all of the data that has been pushed up to the cloud here. Top right corner, last synced. You can see it's last posted or updated or refreshed by Michael Schinn at 8:34 this morning. I can refresh my window in a few seconds here, and you'll see it'll actually updated at 12:21 p.m. Denver time here. But what you're able to do, this is just basically now showing you all of the actual data that's now been pushed up to the cloud. I can then use and create different tabs here. I can easily click onto Add Tab. And this is now showing me all the different breakdowns, the categories, and some of the different options I can do for this. So we'll just do, let's do webinar just for fun here. I'll do level 1 electrical room. And what I'm able to do here, let's do elect. Do that a name. And I can break this down here since I utilized the Evolve prefab package. I was able to use my kit or spool, and actually I associated everything, all those spools, to an electrical room prefab package. So I can now hit save. What this is now going to do, it's going to make a brand new tab for us here at the end. And it's now filtering everything by that prefab package. So under that kit area, electrical room L1, I can now also go into filters and edit this even more and dive down this rabbit hole. So if I wanted to change this instead of doing it by drawing, so I can do this by specific prefab package if I wanted to, instead of just doing, like this is that whole kit area for that electrical room. I can then break this down even further and say, you know what, I only want to see prefab package level 1, E1, and also E2. I'll click save. That refreshes that tab. You can see here while we're working, it is automatically behind the scenes here also has now updated and says last sync 12:20 p.m. So this is the latest and greatest that's on here. And you can see here I've got 2-inch EMT. We've got a quantity of 231 10-foot sticks that we need to order. So all of this data is all being sorted in here. And I can also adjust this by category as well. So we got tons of data that's inside of here. I can even dive down the rabbit hole even further if you wanted to and sort it just by conduit fittings. I can do subcategories as well. So all the data that's within there can then be, the next so basically the detailer does not have to sit here and create all these different schedules and then push it to Excel. The next guy has to now modify it, and then what if something gets changed or affected in the model? How does that new Excel file get updated? Well, why don't you just have a single source of truth that you just push a button? Oh, I synced it up with materials. You now have access to all of that metadata that's on there.
Yeah, the core idea being, guys, I mean, which a lot of it's self-evident, right, is that you get all of that data out of the model. You're putting it somewhere where you don't have to be a Revit expert in order to access it, right? If you're a purchaser, if you're a project manager, right? I mean, whatever that role is, can hop right in here, easily create some tabs to sort out the information they want, and kind of self-serve that. Not to completely cut out the VDC side, obviously more than welcome to hop in here as well and do the same thing, but it's just giving a lot of those other people in the workflow an opportunity or access to that information without it having to always come out of the model every single time, right? It's pushing it up here, and you now have, not necessarily something like a Forge viewer, right? Because, your project manager doesn't want to hop in here and flop around in a model, right? But he can easily hop in here, see his data, sort it, add a couple tabs, and know exactly what he's looking at.
So I've gone ahead here, as James was talking, I put together level 1 of that same electrical room, this area that's down in here. I now have a electrical room strut data. So this is all of the, everything for the struts, all the channels, all my 90 brackets, everything has now been filtered just by my struts and my brackets and my channels. And here's the full report on how much I need to order and everything that we have here. If you want to now dive down further into the rabbit hole, what we've done is everything is also synced back to the Revit element ID. So if something were to change in a Revit model and say that element got deleted and pushed up, or an element got deleted and then a new piece got added into that spool or whatever, it's tracking it by element ID. So it'll see that that one has been deleted and a new one has been added. So it's constantly tracking that. So it's fully based off of the element ID, which is a great feature to have inside of here. So if you were to, like I said, delete that element, but then add in a brand new one, it'll treat it as a new one, or if I want to move that over and copy it around, so on. So the syncing to the element ID is huge to help make sure that it's actually tracking it as accurately as you possibly can. So it's basically a one-to-one match. That's what's in the Revit model.
Yeah, could you click on that summary tab really quick, Michael? I think I saw a really good example. The very left tab one that you have, just the basic one. Yeah, the big one. There was a really good one right there. The -115 one, about 4 rows down.
Yeah, there you go. Good eye.
So that's a perfect example, right? Where you can see that sync quantity. That's what we fed in our last sync. So that sync we all kind of watch happen. And you can see there that 115, right? If you kind of scroll over to the left, you'll see that UOM column, unit of measure, linear feet, right? LF. So 115 linear feet was removed in our last sync. And so now we know, hey, obviously that's not included in that original, that's a difference, right? We have a delta there, and we won't dive into it yet, but just to kind of really paint a picture further, the quantity and remaining quantity also obviously being how many are currently there. And since we removed that 115, it's currently 0, right? But that remaining quantity is going to be really important later, kind of going full circle with that, because what you're really going to start to do is get a really good picture of knowing, all right, what was removed? Was it in a BOM, right? Kind of further down the process, which we'll talk about, and be able to really kind of chase down some of those purchasing decisions when you do have changes. So like I said, I won't jump the gun too much on that, but just kind of wanted to mention that to kind of paint a picture for later.
Exactly. And we've got a great question here. Can you produce a final project build material at the end of the modeling process? Let's actually dive into this a little bit here. We kind of covered pretty high level of what we wanted to kind of, show today of how easy it is to push that data up, looking glass, the next person can access all this data. Let's, for example, take this level 1 electrical room, all the strut data that we have here. I even have another one for equipment. We can even do one for conduit, but I can actually take this, and now let's go ahead and create a new bill of material, a new BOM. So I'll say L1, level 1, strut order, or BOM. Black room, just for fun, give it a little name. So that bill of material has now been created. So now when I go back to my Revit sync and I look at this list that we have here, I can now send all of this here to an actual bill of material. In this case, L1 electrical room strut BOM. So all of this filter that I have here, everything set up, I can now add all that information to that BOM. So now when I switch to that actual BOM, the electrical room, here is all those parts and pieces that have now been added to. So from a catalog item, you can see it's this tab for catalog, and also there's a write-in section. So catalog items, these are actually already, they're automatically linked to an actual catalog, and you can set the catalog up basically by project or by company. So depending on what that company standard is or what that project requirement is, you can also set up all that on the back end within materials here. So that way you can actually refine exactly what the part and piece that the person's purchasing it from. So what actually is the manufacturer? Yeah, it's a 4/8 by 1.5 strut. From the detailer side, that's all he really cared about. Yeah, it's an 1.5 strut. But was it a B line, or was it a power strut, or whatever the manufacturer is? That can now then be determined by the purchaser. You can see here's the actual catalog and so on.
Yeah, what you can really do, guys, there's a couple layers there. We can kind of, if we get any questions, we can dive a little deeper on this. But generally speaking, you can push that, whatever element that is, up to that little Revit sync landing pad we were looking at, right? Yep. And then what you'll see in that is there's a bunch of links, and those links essentially mean, hey, there's a link to something else downstream to give you further information. kind of full circle, meaning, you know, as you're drawing that, unless the takeout's different, right? You don't maybe need to put what the manufacturer is. Yeah, if there's a takeout difference between say on the mechanical side, you know, 2 or 3 different manufacturers for an elbow, that's of course something you want to model and make sure you're modeling correctly. But for some other things, I'll make something up like a screw. It's like, well, it's the same, right? You know, I don't care what manufacturer you get it from, say. So what you're able to do on materials is map that to the correct one, where you can draw it generically in Revit when it's, you know, when it makes sense to do that, and then have that information further downstream to where, once again, you're not having to push all of that into the Revit model. And there's multiple layers, right? Default, meaning that those are things we set up automatically, you know, different mappings, and we can dive into the specifics around that if anybody wants, but then company specific ones and project specific ones. So we maybe have a default one that says, hey, I'm struggling to think of an electrical example, but we'll say this screw is a, you know, manufacturer or a generic manufacturer screw, right? But then at the company level, we always order from this manufacturer. So I can set up a link to override that one step further. Then maybe you have a PM who says, hey, for this project, we're actually not even going to do none of that. We're ordering from this other random manufacturer. You can override that a step further. And so it's really giving you a lot of flexibility there to set those standards at each level. But of course, all really kind of getting down to the core issue of not bloating that model with it to begin with.
Exactly. So you basically, in theory, drawing with a generic part. It's an 1.5" strut, just generic.
And I saw another one, not to derail us too much, but from Mike that was asking, is this for electrical only or also mechanical? A little bit of a complicated answer. It works the exact same for mechanical. The challenge being is we're kind of putting a couple final touches on it, but more than welcome or I'll actually probably reach out to you after to give you some deeper information on it. But if anybody's interested, still feel free to kind of reach out and get the conversation going. But it's going to work the exact same, but we're just putting some final touches on the mechanical side at the moment.
And then there's one more on there too regarding your Revit families. Yeah, this is just Revit in general it works with. We're utilizing our families in here just from a demo standpoint. But yeah, all of your families that you have already, that will push that data up to the cloud. Basically, any family, you just need to make sure that whatever parameter that you're mapping with, you're just making sure that that has the right data that you want to push up to the cloud. But yeah, you can totally use any of your own content from, it's just a Revit family part.
Yep. And same thing for on that same question from Mike, just building upon how it's, you know, very similar, even for the mechanical side. If you're drawing in something like fabrication parts, you know, you're able to send that directly up there. You know, you just pull product long description or short description or all these other fields that, you know, we use. Same thing, you know, just pick that's what you want to send for the description or the size. Very, very similar concept.
Exactly. Yeah, continuing along with our that active build material that we were throwing together here. So as you're sitting here, when you're back in the planning state, you basically are able to keep going through here and adding more and more information, more stuff to the, like, for example, let's add in the, do some of the equipment that we have in here too. So I can also say, let's do this. I think there was electrical equipment. Perfect. So here is all of the level 1 electrical room equipment that was added in here. And you can see there's a couple more things in here, so you actually can click on to these as well. I'll add those. You know what, if you want, we can actually add all of those you want. Send those to that same BOM if you wanted to, or you can add it to any particular one. Just for fun, I'll just throw it all into that one strut BOM, for example. So now back at that strut, which is actually just stick with the strut one. So we got the strut. Here's all the struts that are, or the elements that have been added to that bill of material list. You actually have the also option to do any additional write-in items. So you can add in more items that you want from in here. So that way it's just additional items that you want to add to that order from that purchasing standpoint. And then from there, you're then able to then basically push this along the path and basically turn this into an actual requisition to actually order these parts and pieces.
And with that, guys, as we're kind of starting to finalize painting the picture here, I just wanted to circle back and really touch on a couple key points that we were really trying to get throughout this process, right? And the first is, it's no secret. I mean, I guarantee if we had another poll here that asked, I mean, it'd probably be unanimous. Is are you having trouble completing the amount of work and information requirements that are currently required at the VDC process, right? Overwhelmingly, I'm sure the answer is yes there. And there's a multitude of reasons. But the main one being is oftentimes on the VDC side, it's kind of creating this Revit bottleneck because all of that information has to live there. And what this is really allowing is getting that, as much as possible, as much as it warrants anyway, getting that information up somewhere else where kind of everyone can access it and kind of use it without it having to be a big learning curve, learning how to fly around a model, anything like that. And then ultimately harness it for all those other steps down the process, right? Whether it's, your purchaser being able to push it to a BOM and a rec, and there's a lot of functionality around that, which once again, because we have mainly BDC managers on the call, we won't dive into that, but or at least too much, but they can really leverage it all the way downstream, centralize it, but more than anything, not having to continuously have Revit as that bottleneck for it. But good question so far. I'll encourage anybody, if you got any questions, anything you want to see specifically, just feel free to drop it in there. We'll dive into it. And so, yeah, what you're showing here, Michael, and you can definitely talk to more of it. But this is kind of just an example of some of that information that purchaser or even a project manager can pull from that information we're pushing up, right? So,
exactly. Again, same thing. If I were to come in here now, draw in some more stuff in this area, go ahead and make some more changes to it. Just click the materials button, pushes up the new data up to the sites. It's all being tracked per the Revit ID number, so therefore it'll know if it's been added or removed. And then that data is now ready for your purchasing team or whoever wants to manipulate this data now has access to it. They do not need a license to Revit to access all that data and all that tracking.
Well, and one other, just because we got a little bit extra time here, Michael, and then we'll hit this other question I just seen come in, is back in the materials sync functionality out of Revit, those kind of data verification boxes are on the bottom, area, those kind of things. Let's touch on that for a minute, because I think that could be really powerful.
Totally. So I think we're back at here. We've actually got a couple different breakdowns here, so you can see my active projects. The Vandelay Industry one, project breakdowns. You actually can set up what the different breakdowns are going to be. So in this case, kitting or spools, electrical room level 1. So I can add that, make sure that that's actually saved and stored within that project that's in here, as well as different areas that are in there. So when you go to push this up, it'll actually verify, make sure does area K actually exist in materials line or not. So it'll actually make it really easy to verify that different stuff in there. So if I push this up, verify that the kit or that area actually exists up on, or those values exist up at materials land. That's what the key breakdown allows you to do here.
Yep. And so, in that project kickoff meeting, say, you kind of jointly all get together, maybe even all pull up materials, right? Hey, what manufacturer are we ordering for these jobs? What kind of defaults we want to make sure we set for this job specifically, right? Some of that mapping we were talking about earlier. One of that could also, or one of those things, tasks could also be, hey, what's our pour area looks like? What's our pour sequence, right? As you're getting all that information, filling that out here, so that way when you're sending that out of Revit, there's never any lapse. There's never any, hey, you sent something called area A, but that's actually, we're using area 1 for some reason, right? There's none of that confusion. Everything's very specific and kind of all mapped together. So a lot of opportunity there too to make sure it's right when it comes in. And Michael, just a heads up, I think we do have one other poll question as well. Yes, if you want to launch it.
Let me stop sharing for a second there. Yeah, what data is hardest? Oh, go for it, Ashley.
Okay, awesome. What data is hardest for you to export from the model for purchasing?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one, because if there's anybody, if there's any mechanicals on the call, I think we could see some different answers. But yeah, definitely interested in hearing anybody's opinion on this one.
I'd choose all the above.
Yeah, and there may be some we don't have on here. You may be like, well, I know you got some listed on here, but I got a different one. Just we'll say default to all of the above if it's not on here.
Exactly. Yeah. We kind of broke it up here a little bit. Hangers and build a hanger BOM. That works for both electrical, mechanical. Ancillaries, that's really huge on the mechanical side. All that endless data that's also added into those ITM and all the different parts and pieces are in there. Similar to how an in-wall assembly works. Like you have a box, but it has just endless amount of information or shared families in there, nested families within your in-wall assembly. Families can get really complex because you're just trying to add in all that metadata when in reality, to plan that assembly is just assembly A1. That's on the sheet, and that's all the detailer needed to place. That A1 represents a ton of ordering data associated to it. So.
Well, and I'll add one more in here, or one more piece of color here before we see the results, and that's, one specific problem, just again on the mechanical side, is you probably are using, if you are drawing in fab parts, right, fabrication reports to export out your fab data, but then you've got some electrical equipment or maybe a fixture or who knows, different examples that are families. And it's like, well, how do I marry those two together? So you're having to make a schedule for your families, and you're exporting fabrication reports for your fab parts, and everything's kind of a mix match. And, once again, materials are going to allow best of both worlds, one spot for all that information. So that's another unique challenge. I'm trying to get the, exports correct. So yeah, let's see what results we got on this one. Yeah, good mix there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Interesting stuff. Well, we got 2 more questions, Michael, if you want to hit any of these.
Yeah, was it the last one? What date is the hardest? Oh, the last question.
2 more.
My apologies. Yeah. So does the material sent to the BOM update on quantities from the Revit sync, or is it at time of stamp order? So yeah, if I come in here, if I were to now go ahead and edit anything on here, if I were to add in another piece of conduit here or something, let's actually dive in.
Hey, Michael, we can't see your screen.
Yeah, sure.
That always helps. Yeah, so if we were to actually come in here and basically copy this or draw in more data that's in here, it's associated to the Revit actual ID number. It actually does know that it has been added or removed. So materials will handle that gracefully in terms of elements that are now associated or not associated to that actual package or that prefab package or part of that Revit order. So if I come in here,
so it's live per your last sync.
Yep. Here we go. So I'll just hit A.
And yeah, the licensing. Which yes, Corey, it is a license-based program, so it's just a username, password, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a user-based kind of license there.
Oops, and I want to push this up. Probably should have added in way more conduit in there. You really see a change, but yeah.
And one other piece of information, just to kind of fill some time as syncing all this stuff back up again, is if you know that there's just a one-off change, if and you don't want to send your whole model up at that time, you do have some options there with the integration profile to tailor in that selection. So of course, right, categories, using things like element filters, if you guys are familiar with that from electrical and mechanical programs, that definitely helps. But you also have another option there, which is for either pre-selection, just that view you're in, or the entire model. So there's another extra kind of piece of functionality to control that export out if you really need to. Obviously, it's probably always best, especially maybe end of the day or something, to send that whole model up. That way it's at least accurate up there, generally speaking. But if you kind of are keeping track of that as you're drawing, you can really tailor that in that export out too. And of course, depending on what you're sending up, it's going to greatly, affect your export time. So.
Exactly. Yeah, we're doing the whole thing here, so I should have.
Yeah, we're sending what is that? 6,000 something elements, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, good bit.
We've been, and this is a full BIM 360. I'm on Wi-Fi here, so there's, but for the amount of value that's being and all that data that's being pushed up, it's pretty quick. And we're technically still like in the V1 stage with this, so we're developing a lot with this functionality. So it's more and more feedback from our customers. We're going to keep growing this product. It's going to be pretty incredible where we can go with this.
Yeah. And I'll reiterate that, Michael. I mean, there's a drastic amount of development continuing on this. So there's all kind of functionality that we won't dive into, right? Just to kind of only show you what we have currently right now, but just to kind of, once again, paint the picture, tons of interesting things coming. So if you're a little unsure about it, you may, well, what about this thing? What about that thing? Like I said, we're not showing the entire product. There's a lot of other couple of steps here that, it also supports, but then also tons of development coming as well.
Yep. In regards to that also, James, we also have a 90-day, basically a try it for 90 days program that we're putting together right now for Evolve Materials. So you try it risk-free to give it a shot, click some buttons and see actually how it works. We're trying to basically get some additional feedback from our customers and try and really help drive that roadmap with all the things that we want to do. We've had some great feedback already with some additional enhancements that are be coming out fairly soon.
Yeah, so if you're a current electrical or mechanical customer, hopefully you've seen it already. If you haven't, easy way to go see it is if you guys are familiar with the notifications area, so over there in the resources panel, there's a little blue bell looking thing. If you click that, there should be a link right there at the top that will take you directly to it if you're an electrical customer. Like I said, just because we are still in the final touches of the mechanical one, if you're a mechanical customer, you won't see that notification. So just a heads up. But I would encourage you, if you're interested, still feel free to reach out. Myself, Michael, anybody on the Evolve team, your sales rep, and we'll at least start getting your information to make sure you're looped in as soon as possible. So yeah, if you're interested, electrical side, want to get your hands on it today, hit that notification, do a little quick piece of information, fill out there, and we'll get you rolling.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Michael and James, for the presentation. And thanks everyone for attending today's webinar. We appreciate you spending your time with us, and we trust it was meaningful and impactful for you and your business. We look forward to seeing you on a future Evolve webinar. Thanks again and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.